chair of the City Council's Recovery and Resiliency Committee, I've had a series of hearings about post-Sandy work, and hearing from experts, not just from New York, but from around the country. And I believe that there are people in the DEC who are on the record saying, you should not be building up density in flood-prone areas that are still dealing with these aftermath of storms. I mean, right now, the city is in the process of trying to revamp its emergency evacuation plans because during Superstorm Sandy, the 23-story high-rises had a difficult time evacuating people with disabilities and senior citizens. A 40-story town? So there is a huge planning problem. But to go into the DEC's role, now, one thing that we should also put on the record is that for over 30 years, an incinerator burned garbage at the Southwest Brooklyn incinerator site by the city of New York. And we learned only through a lawsuit in the 1980s that the state DEC issued the city waiver after waiver after waiver, year after year, with absolutely zero oversight over what toxins were released into the adjacent community. Now, what happens when there's no oversight? There's no studies, there's no environmental remediation programs for the community, but we've seen the aftermath in the form of increased asthma rates, increased cancer rates, people who have relatives who have died of cancer with no history of cancer. So forgive us for having doubts about the record. And as Ida Sanoff mentioned before, that right now, the city is beginning to demolish the remaining part of the incinerator to build a dangerous garbage transfer station. And there are not protocols in place right now as we speak to monitor that site. So for us, I am concerned as a person who represents the Wabash community, and regardless, Wabash, Trump, we're in this together. There's no, to me, I don't care about the lines, 48th or 42nd district. We are one neighborhood together. I believe that this is not a site suitable, based on the toxins, what we know is down there right now. Based on the work that we've already done so far, showing that there are bad things, not just deep in the surface, but actually close to the surface as well. I believe that this site is not suitable. And I would appreciate if the DEC can go back to the commissioner and issue an opinion, a statement from the commissioner about stating his position on this site. Because this is our state environmental, you are correct, sir, and I appreciate that clarification. This is the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. You are our state's leading environmental agency. You have done some good work, there's no question. I appreciate that you banned fracking, but this is a site that has a lot of problems. This is a community that is still dealing with the aftermath of Sandy and the infrastructure crisis. So I would appreciate if we have a notice from the DEC commissioner himself about his position on the record about the environmental impacts and whether or not this project should move forward. Because I have not seen yet one environmental agency issue their expert opinion about this site. But what we do know is that there are problems with this site, there are toxins at this site, and that concerns the health and the quality of life of this community. Thank you very much.
What I can say is that, again, to reiterate, if the contamination remains in place, we can deal with that. So we are not pushing on redevelopment, but we are saying that there are protective measures required if redevelopment takes place. And you brought up a whole bunch of issues about whether that redevelopment ought to take place. And I'm not from Brooklyn, but they sound like perfectly legitimate issues. I can understand and sympathize with all of them, but I hate to be bureaucratic about it, but that's not my role. Right? My role is to protect you folks if this goes forward, and also to protect you folks if it does not go forward.
Can you relay my request to the commissioner to put something?
Well, I will point that out. is that the entire state DEC remediation program is dedicated to the notion that you can decontaminate contaminated sites and reuse them. That you don't have, they don't have to be, they don't have to be left to fester. And the fact that this site has been used successfully as a shopping mall for 40, 50 years now, that's the kind of thing we're supposed to be encouraging. So we're confident that we can be protective under the current circumstances. We're confident we can be protected if the development goes forward. And that's the entire New York State brownfield law is based on that premise. And all the other 49 states have similar programs to encourage the redevelopment of old industrial properties.
I completely hear you, and I'll close by saying that I completely hear you. I would appreciate, though, a request to the commissioner himself, and I don't mind following up. I certainly welcome cleaning up, but I do not welcome exacerbating bad conditions right now. And there's the old notion, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. So let us try to get this community back up and running from the storm. Let these seniors and these families heal. And that is a request that we're making to the DEC, because you do have the power to tell them that this site is not environmentally suitable. You cannot be remediated. And I'm making that request. Thank you, sir.
Just a logistical question. So first, you have to conduct the research and then you do remediation, right? So when you conduct the research, will you take into consideration 40 floor? Maybe tomorrow it's going to be 50, 60, 100 floors?
It doesn't really matter. Once we get the contamination out of the ground, we would be able to get it or stabilize it down to, say, 15 or 20 feet below the ground surface.
But
at that point, it doesn't really matter whether it's 20 stories or 30 stories or 40 stories, because all that changes when you get taller. The only thing that's different than the subsurface is that you're just driving bigger beams in the ground to support the building. So again, that question of whether you put a 40-story tower in a 20-story neighborhood, I hear you. I understand why people object to that, but from the standpoint of managing the contamination problem, it's not a big deal.
still it's going to dig deeper, right? The higher they're going to dig deeper. The higher
if they dig deeper, yeah, then that means we've got to change the remediation.
Right.
But
So
keep in mind, you can't dig very deep here. If you want to put an underground parking garage or something like that, the water table is very shallow. So it's very difficult. Folks, if you can keep the noise of the voices down. Okay, I've got one last thing here. It's 9 o'clock, and the building maintenance folks are going to boot us out of here in about 15 minutes. If you don't get a chance to ask questions of us here, we got phones, we got email. We're here to listen to you and to handle your questions, even if you don't think of them right now. So even if you don't get to the mic tonight, keep in contact with us. Sir?
I would like to thank you for coming here, and I would like to thank you for coming here and get our community. I'm asking to help us because we're really concerned about security. I would like to start with reading one sentence from the margin published by your Department of Environmental Conservation. And in the future, the construction or utility workers excavating is a part of that organization. I'm saying is, in the future, if construction or utility workers excavate beneath the parking lot or existing buildings, additional health and safety measures will be required to reduce the potential exposure to these contaminants. The key word here is reduce, but not eliminate, meaning that people will be still exposed to those dangerous chemicals. And we are living in the urban, densely populated area next to the site. This includes existing 23-floor residential buildings and 4 schools. And we all know that there is no need to excavate and expose people to dangerous chemicals. And we're asking you to help us, to help our community need to be free and we do have right for a hazardous-free environment. And we all should not surrender to the real estate developers' greed. I read a lot of the documents on your website, and according to the document, which is called Remediation of Former MGP Sites, page 9 of 17, a variety of control measures cannot be utilized in the densely populated area, which is mentioned about the form method. This method is not applicable in our area. And what was more, this document, the last document that I read, there is only writing about reducing the exposure, but not completely eliminating the exposure to the dangerous chemicals. And as we all know, the decision, and we ask you for your help, for your kind of saying that this decision must be made with the protection of human health as the environment as a first priority. And this was very pathetic when your husband, the Department of Health, said that he will be doing a weekly reports, meaning that once a week he will be doing some kind of a check of the air quality transit. So what will happen in between, like in between the first day and last day of the week, they will be exposed. So I would like to understand this. Basically.
So, the quote from the fact sheet, let me reiterate what we're talking what we're talking about there is the need to, even if the mall stays in its current place, we need to protect future underground utility workers against potential exposure to contamination. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about redevelopment. We're talking about a management plan for what's there now.
I'm talking about the excavation. It's explicitly mentioned about the excavation.
Yeah, but that's excavation for a trench or a water line.
But forever. It's saying that whatever you will do even a small type of excavation, still there is a risk, and this risk can be only reduced but not eliminated. So can you imagine if you will excavate for the 4-story building, can you imagine the magnitude of the exposure that people will be dealing with? And if you cannot guarantee, you only can reduce the exposure. So it means that people will be exposed, and if you will do weekly checkups, so what happens in the week time period? People will be exposed for a week, right? And this is really not the right way of doing this.
Now we're confident we can manage this regardless of what the future plans are. And we've got a track record of doing that. There's still a few more people behind us.
Okay, thank you, but this is what we just said, but what's
Time,
interesting, I
sir.
saw a slide.
Sir,
It was saying,
they're waiting.
It was saying, in your slide, it was saying, unlikely to expose people, so you just show, you will unlikely will not expose people, but you didn't see on your slide that
Sir.
you will guarantee the people from the
your
exposure.
time is up, sir.
Okay, I have next question. So there are thousands of brownfields in New York State, thousands. There are many communities that have been begging for many years to remove the pollution. However, here we're begging not to open up this site. Why is it that it's so easy for the developer to get the DEC to develop this? Is it only the economic development that is primary goal, whereas there's so many other sites that should have priority for something we don't want as a community? That's the first question. Second question, on that map that you showed before, the main sites are behind the shopping mall. That road behind the shopping mall is not part of the developer's property. It's part of Trump Village 4. And I don't think that Trump Village 4 would like any excavation there. And if they say no to that, how can the DEC choose to excavate in that area? Because that is where, on the map, is the main pollution sites.
Okay, the contamination that you see that is migrated on past the Trump Tower, Trump Village boundary, is at very, very great depths below the ground surface. That's stuff we're probably not going to go after. We don't have to because it's deep underground. go to your earlier question, it's important to keep in mind this is not in a legal sense a brownfield site. That is to say, DEC is not encouraging redevelopment. DEC is not giving away generous tax credits for development, which we do elsewhere. This is a site that National Grid is under the Superfund program to clean up if it becomes available. So that sounds like a bureaucratic answer, and I hate that it sounds that way, but it's an important distinction.
How is this chosen out of the thousands that are?
The MGPs are identified for corporate records. We had a nasty track record of encountering ones that we didn't know about. MGPs were not originally identified as hazardous waste sites because of the technicality in hazardous waste law. So they escaped our notice about the mid-1990s, and we started running into increasing numbers of them. We went out to the utilities and said, hey guys, you guys used to own plants in every little town here. What do you say you fess up? Tell us where those are. And all of the utilities statewide eventually signed multi-site consent orders to prioritize and investigate and clean them up. And that's how we got to where we are today.
And the question isn't about that. How did you prioritize?
How did I know?
How did DEC prioritize?
We prioritize based on the potential for exposure. Sites that were under schools and parks got attention.
Is there potential for exposure here?
No, there's not. No.
So why is this prioritized?
It isn't prioritized. We are not here. We are not here advocating a cleanup.
So why is DEC's resources being wasted on a project that's low priority, that is not wanted by the community, and why isn't it being spent? Why are these resources being spent in places where people want them to be spent?
DEC's resources will be spent here if and only if the development goes forward. Because if you start ripping into this site, then you take a site that is not a threat and potentially make it a site that is a threat. And that's when we have to get involved.
Last comment, that is a very passive, easy answer, but it's always known that DEC does play a role in selection of the sites, because if they say we don't have enough resources to the developer, it won't be developed. It will not be dug into. If they say, I'm sorry, you are number 100 on the list out of the parks that we need to fix that come before that, then we won't develop. But the answer is, it's all about economic development. And that's a statement. That's a statement out of the things that are online available for people to read. It's a statement. It's about economic development. And this is low priority.
Before I begin, I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank everybody who didn't shuffle out yet, right? And I want to get back. I understand you came here and you don't have an opinion, right? You don't have an opinion about whether or not this should happen, but we should all just get back to the main issue, whether or not this thing should be built. Or we should come out and say it shouldn't. And you said something very interesting earlier, all right? You're going to use the soil, what was it? The soil of the developer. You're going to take samples, right?
Right.
Okay. You're going to use those samples, and when somebody goes and takes samples and comes out with conclusions about the samples, right? Is it biased sometimes? Do you think the developer is going to come out with a biased opinion about their sample? You bet.
Can I answer that one straight? Like the reason I want to have an agency person or a national grid person right there at the development rate is because I don't want to take the developer's word for what he found in his own samples. I want direct observation from somebody that I work with and who's
right.
I trust.
But you wanted to use their sample, and you know you were going to use it. Right. You're going to watch them collect it, all right. But you want to use resources of somebody who's, you already said, is biased, right? Okay. Right. Right. Okay. So you do want to use it. Right. So, and you, how are you going? You have a special relationship with the developer or not?
No. I've never even met him.
You never met him. How are you going to get the samples? Are you going to develop a relationship with him?
The developer has informed us of when he plans to start
Okay.
National Grid.
I mean, I don't want you guys to get too cozy.
No,
you know?
and you shouldn't. You absolutely shouldn't. National Grid, they're on the hook for this. They will have their consultants send somebody out to observe the drone, and we will have somebody there if we've got a DEC person available. We'll have an DEC. Well, you've got people here who are licensed professional engineers whose license is on the line in their relationship with us. Yes, we do have to some extent, trust grid's consultants, but those are people we work with every day on sites state water. And if they start blowing smoke at me, I get that. And we do have people, we have inspectors that show up on sites unannounced. You never know when we're going to show up. I don't know when people are going to show up because I don't schedule. So there's a very high level of protection. And also keep in mind,
I know that you're saying this stuff, right? And I understand, right? But you look at the totality of what's going on here. We had one guy who came in, right? And he acted like such a, good word.
He was a big fat liar.
Well, she said it, I didn't, right?
this is the previous meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
And now you come here, you're a very nice guy, you're very folksy and stuff like that, right? It seems like it's all sort of intertwined, you know what I'm saying? Right?
I hope, well, I deal a lot with real estate developers.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes.
All right, no more questions.
I just have one follow-up thing to what he said. Just like if a crime is committed, there's a chain of custody for the evidence. I wouldn't trust Sharon or his people to tell me if it was raining out, let alone what the soil sample shows. So when they take a soil sample, you should take it at the same time and compare yours to his. Because they have lied to us consistently about everything.
That's called soil sampling. It's a routine part of what we do. The one thing I'd like to point out, though, it's very difficult to hide qualified contamination. It's black, it's stinky, it's really obvious.
But they paid off everybody.
But they can't pay off my eyeballs and my
They
nose.
have paid off everybody.
All right, that's
Okay.
So we all agree you're a very nice person, we like you, and the thing that you've said that I like the most is if this project goes through. Now that's a good thing. Let's all concentrate on not accepting it going through. And we want to know, how did this project start? Why this guy thinks he can build a 40-story building here? Don't plans have to be approved? Doesn't the community have any say whatsoever? I understand, but I'm just saying that in general to get it on the record. So thank you for mentioning that if this project goes through, because almost everybody in here doesn't think that it should. So when you go back and talk to your supervisors, you must let them know that we all find it horrible that this thing is even imagined.
That message received.
Anthony Caramelo, I'm on the board of directors at Warbass. I just have a question concerning the logistics on the site. Now, when does either National Grid or the contractor that it hires step in? At what point of the construction?
Okay, assuming that the redevelopment goes forward.
Yes, assuming that.
They would step in immediately following the completion of the demolition.
All right, so my question is, when you're doing the demolition and when you're excavating and when you're creating the foundation, what are they doing to stop it from getting in there?
No, we'll be there before that. I'm talking about.
Are you going to cover the entire foundation site or the demolition site?
Yes.
With a tent that the cranes and everything is going to be underneath?
Correct.
Really? Like that tall? You could do that?
We've done.
I hope so. Then that sounds.
And we move it too. I mean, if the excavation is bigger than the size of the tent, you can actually move the tent from place to place on the site.
We've done that several times.
Put the tent
On
on
something
rails.
that size?
Yeah.
Your concrete guy is not going to be too
My
happy with that.
first tent picture from Bay Shore, that tent was moved 7 times. Because it was
And
a
then you
huge site.
did a concrete foundation in
When we make a concrete foundation, we mix soil
Well, that's what I said. I'm talking about when you're excavating the actual site.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you excavating and pouring a foundation in pieces.
Yeah, they do it all the time.
Really?
All the time.
All right. I hope so. I have never seen that. I've been in construction for 40 years. Okay.
Maybe we should thank the developer for building this thing if they're going to build it, because maybe that will make you guys come in here and clean up the site better than if they didn't come in here. Maybe we should all thank you. But if we're not sure about that, and this developer's interested in building, and that might distract from creating a healthier environment, then maybe we should use the principle, I think it's called eminent domain, where somebody has a business, but the public, it's against the public interest, and the government says, no, you can't have it anymore. So, but an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. If we think that maybe building this building won't increase the health and well-being of everybody, but might do the opposite, especially with the distraction of building the building, then maybe we should say eminent domain. Now, don't build a building. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Thanks.